के ओपनिंग स्टेटमेंट के बाद हम आपके सवाल जवाब ले सकेंगे. Sir, may I request you to brief the gathering, please?
Thank you all for being here on this briefing on the outcomes of the G20 Digital Economy Ministers meetings. As you're aware, the Indian presidency of the G20 has been something we've experienced for the past several months and is an ongoing, culminating in the leaders meet in a few days. And there have been many discussions by nations of the G20 and beyond during this presidency of India. Area that the G20 presidency of India has certainly spent a lot of time talking about and gaining wide acceptance, which is the issue of technology and the ongoing growth and expansion of the digital economy. Over the several rounds of digital economy ministers meetings, there has been extreme awareness building and consensus around the three topics that shaped or that were in the agenda of the digital economy ministers meetings. The first one being the digital public infrastructure. Second, cyber security in the digital economy. And the third, digital skills. And digital public infrastructure in particular, I think it is a very safe thing to say today that there has been, for the first time ever, a global consensus and what ought to be the definition, the framework and the principles of digital public infrastructure. From the Indian context, as you are aware, our Prime Minister launched this intense digitalization process way back in 2015 with the launch of Digital India. And India has seen several DPIs that have been created. And I can safely say that the DPI conversations today that are being held across the world and have in a sense being amplified by these G20 conversations is an exciting conversation, has gained momentum in the context of this presidency, Indian presidency of the G20. India is now a case study, a nation that has employed and deployed technological tools for progress and growth. And this is increasingly being seen by countries that have lagged behind as a way to follow India's lead, taking the India DPI, an open source digital infrastructure, and using this to create the same impact that India has. We have further, in these G20 conversations, understood how the DPI is a powerful mechanism of inclusion, especially for countries of the global south. And one of the aspects that has been discussed is mobilizing finance for DPIs and helping countries that have lagged behind in the digitization process to also get a leg up and move ahead. India in particular has already signed 8 MOUs where the India stack and the India DPI will be made available free of cost, open source for countries that have signed the MOUs to implement in their own countries and to create their own ecosystems of innovation and developers that support their DPIs. On cyber security in the digital economy, again, the G20 digital economy ministers have had wide-ranging discussions on why it is important for businesses to be protected, why businesses' cybersecurity are an important issue for all the countries of the world, especially the G20, to be focused on, because the digital economy, as you can see, is becoming an increasingly larger component of economic progress and global economy. And in the Indian context, the digital economy has grown from 4.5% in 2014 to about 11% today and is expected to touch 20% by 25-26. On digital skilling and skills for this new post-COVID increasingly digital world, India's talent, our focus on creating digital skills for our youth is again something that has resonated during these discussions, and India has, and I believe many countries are interested in partnering amongst themselves and with India on creating digitally ready, future ready, skilled talent to deal with the challenges and opportunities of the coming decade, which our Honorable Prime Minister refers to as decade, a decade of technology opportunities. I can certainly say that the Indian approach on DPI, and indeed this global recognition of what DPI is, demolishes the old normals, which was about large tech companies dominating technology and digitization, and paves the way for a new normal where democratizing technology, access to technology, open source, nimble, consumer-driven and non-intermediated DPIs that are all part of the framework that the world hopefully will embrace and move forward on. So this is broadly what I wanted to share with you. It is a very exciting time for all those who are participants in the digital economy in general. I think it is also a very exciting time when the G20 recognizes the power of DPI, and I am certainly hopeful, and I can even move beyond hopeful and say I'm certainly sure that the outcomes and the discussions during these digital economy ministers meetings during this presidency of by India of the G20 will certainly have a lasting impact on the shape of the world in the coming years and the decade. Thank you.
So maybe take questions now. The floor is open for your questions. Whoever is asking, please raise your hand, introduce your name and organization before you begin, please. Here, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Mujib Mashal from the New York Times. First, a quick question of clarification on the 8 MOUs you mentioned. Could you possibly share the countries that those have been signed with? That is one. The second is there's very clear excitement around DPI and around digital being as a big part of India's growth. But every time the momentum builds towards that, the hurdles actually end up being domestic. And we've seen from
Yes, open
Manipur
statement
to
के बाद.
Kashmir
And this is a global phenomenon. The fact that technology, which was for many, many years seen as a force for good, is also today hosting user harm, is hosting misinformation, and the collateral and the consequent damages that are caused by those type of actors or those type of activities is an unfortunate issue of technology, universally experienced phenomenon. From our point of view, our government, our Prime Minister has been very clear for some years now, several rounds of that our approach to policy making is on one hand, continue to intensify the digitization of our economy, creating more and more opportunities for our startups, building and impacting governance and democracy in a positive way through using digital DPIs. On the other hand, ensuring that the policy framework is aimed at ensuring that the internet is open, as in free from any monopolies or duopolies or market disruptive forces. And the third is safe and trusted. It deals with all the issues of user harm, including but not limited to misinformation and incitement and all of that. It is a very safe thing to say. And is also accountable. For the first time ever. The asymmetry between the big tech platforms that innovate, that definition, exploit the internet for business, the framework and the principles, versus the small user, the little guy who uses the internet. That asymmetry is being addressed with our own framework of laws and rules to create accountability and launch this and intense digitalization process way back. So we think we are set out. We have DPDP, which is the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, which deals with one aspect, which is privacy and data protection of user harm. And we will roll out multiple things that are aimed at ensuring that the internet, as it delivers good, as it delivers inclusion, as it delivers transformational governance, also has the necessary guardrails to prevent user harm and prevent misinformation and misuse. India is now a case study, a nation that has employed and deployed technological tools for progress and
हेलो
growth.
सर, थैंक यू। मनोहर केसरी, इंडिया न्यूज से सर। सर, आपने बताया साइबर सिक्योरिटी को लेकर के जिस तरह से पूरा वर्ल्ड, सर दिस साइड फ्रंट, साइबर सिक्योरिटी को लेकर के जिस तरह से हम डिजिटल इकोनॉमी की बात कर रहे हैं भारत।
We have further in these G20 conversations understood how the DP why businesses, cybersecurity are an important issue for all the countries of the world, especially the G20, to be focused on. Because the digital economy, as you can see, is becoming an increasingly larger component of economic progress and global economy. And in the Indian context, the digital economy has grown from 4.5% in 2014 to about 11% today and is expected to touch 20% by 25-26. On digital skilling and skills for this new post-COVID increasingly digital world, India's talent, our focus on creating digital skills for our youth is again something that has resonated during these discussions, and India has, and I believe many countries are interested in partnering amongst themselves and with India on creating digitally ready, future ready, skilled talent to deal with the challenges and opportunities of the coming decade, which our Honorable Prime Minister refers to as TechAid, a decade of technology opportunities. I can certainly say that the Indian approach on DPI, and indeed this global recognition of what DPI is, demolishes the old normals, which was about large tech companies dominating technology and digitization, and paves the way for a new normal where democratizing technology, access to technology, open source, nimble, consumer-driven and non-intermediated DPIs that are all part of the framework that the world hopefully will embrace and move forward on. So this is broadly what I wanted to share with you. It is a very exciting time for all those who are participants in the digital economy in general. I think it is also a very exciting time when the G20 recognizes the power of DPI, and I am certainly hopeful, and I can even move beyond hopeful and say I'm certainly sure that the outcomes and the discussions during these digital economy ministers meetings during this presidency of by India of the G20 will certainly have a lasting impact on the shape of the world in the coming years and the decade. Thank you.
So maybe take questions now. The floor is open for your questions. Whoever is asking, please raise your hand, introduce your name and organization before you begin, please. Here, go ahead, please.
Seeing a very transformed form of governance because of the DPS that we have built.
Yeah, you take the question next. Can we please know your name and organization before you begin, please?
Can you shed some more light on how this financing of DPI will be done? Have we reached some sort of an agreement?
No, I can't shed any light on it as much as I would have loved to shed light but I think what we have agreed in this G20 is that there is a need for it, and please understand that this is a process that will now have life and momentum beyond the Indian presidency of the G20, and that is certainly something that we are very deeply satisfied about. What will be the actual financing measures, which countries, where, how, that will certainly evolve, and it will certainly be all of the above, including multilateral agencies and countries and NGOs and foundations and all of the above.
So Sankalp from Bloomberg News. So just wanted to get a little bit of detail on the 8 countries that you mentioned, if you could name some or all of them. Also, I wanted to ask, could you tell us the level of engagement or agreement which we have to build these DPIs for these countries?
So I'll tell Sushil to give you the countries at the end of what I just say. But look, I want to say that currently we have engaged with 8, but I will certainly, without the risk of being contradicted, say that the interest levels are double and triple that. And there are a lot many more countries that want to engage on this, learn about these DPIs, transfer the technology, part or whole, create the necessary ecosystems in their countries and the skills in their countries, than the 8. We are taking baby steps for this. We certainly don't want to engage at the get-go with 40 countries or 45 countries. And so I want to say that what we are offering today is, to these countries is, A, the technology in itself, the pieces of the India DPI, whole or part. We are offering skilling, and we are also offering access to and partnership with, for their own startups, for their own young companies, access to and partnership with the Indian innovation and developer ecosystem that supports the India DPI. So this is kind of what the proposition is. And the actual countries that have signed these MOUs, I'll let Sushil just share those names with you.
So these are, I might miss out a few, I don't remember all of them, sir, but then these are Suriname, Sierra Leone, Antigua and Barbados, Papua New Guinea. So these are Suriname, Sierra Leone, Antigua and Barbados, Papua New Guinea, and Trinidad and Tobago, and Armenia, Mauritius, and there's one more, I guess.
Saudi Arabia.
So,
Egypt.
Saudi is a yes, we have done, but there's a larger MOU for a digital cooperation with Saudi.
And Egypt.
Egypt also we have done, but that's also for a larger digital cooperation, sir.
Number 93 here.
Yeah. Rishabh from BQ Prime. So wanted to understand within the India stack, arguably Aadhaar and UPI are the biggest ones. Is that something countries are more bullish for? Is that something that countries are showing more interest towards?
No, I think, let me again be carefully explain this. I think, countries that are engaged during the G20, and I suspect even beyond that, are engaged at the entire concept of DPI. The architecture, how it is built, the private, the government and the innovation economy partnership, all of that is an area that are areas that countries want to learn about. In terms of actual application, it could be e-Sanjeevani, it could be DigiLocker, it could be UPI, it could be a whole series of applications. And I don't know if you were there in Pune, but when the DPIs of the India stack were put there in the exhibition, there was a lot of footfall in many non-UPI, many non-Aadhaar stalls. So while UPI is certainly a very powerful part of the India stack, I certainly want to share with you that there are many other applications on the India stack that are equally exciting and interesting, especially in health and storage and document authentication types of applications like DigiLocker, etc.
41.
Thank you. Sir, Shudhiranjan again from Bloomberg. Just wanted clarity on, who is funding this? Has there been any kind of understanding, and will we see clarity in the joint declaration or the declaration that comes out at the end of the summit? And also, who holds the repository? Who will kind of, house the repository of information that you mentioned? Will it be India, or is it still to be decided?
The global DPI repository, which will be essentially the platform where all of these DPIs will be open in the open source manner, shared, technology and innovation shared, and be available to the whole world, will be manned by and managed by us. That is what we have volunteered to do. The second is on the issue of how it will be financed. Without giving you too much of detail, I can tell you that that is going to be not an issue at all, because there is a lot of interest in many bodies, both multilateral, non-governmental, governmental, that are interested in making sure that continents and countries that have lagged behind in digitization have the ability to implement this in this form or in some other form. Now, like I said in a previous question, that while this is the Indian presidency and we have certainly initiated these conversations and there is widespread excitement, interest, consensus, that this will continue beyond this presidency. And therefore, it's not just about saying that this is a conversation for September 2023, this will be a conversation in September 2024, 25, 26, and for many years. So I think these things will evolve, and I'm very confident about it, because my own personal interactions with so many ministers, the power of this technology, which many of us in technology have always talked about, but that it is evident, it is manifestable, it is available in this type of scale, size, and diversity, is something that everybody has now become aware of and is excited about.
Another question from you? I'll take that after him then. Or let 92 begin then.
सर मेरा नाम आकाश श्रीवास्तव है। सर मेरा सवाल है कि जी डिजिटल इकोनॉमी को लेकर पिछले 10-15 सालों में काफ़ी प्रचार प्रसार बढ़ा है, तो सर क्या G20 का जो सम्मेलन हुआ है उसमें सर जिस तरह से डिजिटल धोखाधड़ी या फ्रॉड या इसमें साइबर क्राइम घुसा है, इसको लेकर भी कोई एहतियाती मुद्दे उठाए गए हैं सर? थैंक यू।
जैसे मैंने कहा, डिजिटल इकोनॉमी वर्किंग ग्रुप में 3 मुद्दे उठाए गए थे। एक तो ये DPI का मुद्दा, जो सबसे अहम मुद्दा था, और दूसरा मुद्दा था कि डिजिटल इकोनॉमी में साइबर सिक्योरिटी, और तीसरा था स्किल्स। तो ये दूसरे मुद्दे के बारे में, ये दूसरे इश्यू यानी कि साइबर सिक्योरिटी हमारे डिजिटल इकोनॉमी में, इसमें बहुत अवेयरनेस हुआ है, क्रिएट हुआ है, एक कंसेंसस भी रहा है कि ये इश्यू एक बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट इश्यू है, और दुनिया के देश मिलकर इस इश्यू को देखें, उसके सॉल्यूशंस निकालें। और जैसे मैंने कहा, ये एक G20 का प्रक्रिया शुरू हुआ है, हमारे प्रेसिडेंसी के बाद ये आगे बढ़ता रहेगा। तो इसके जो निटिग्रिटीज हैं, इनके जो सॉल्यूशंस हैं, इनके जो फॉर्मुलेशंस हैं, वो आएंगे, इवॉल्व होंगे। लेकिन ये बहुत स्पष्टता के साथ मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि इस G20 प्रेसिडेंसी में 3 बड़े अहम मुद्दे हमारे लिए और दुनिया के लिए जो है DPI, साइबर सिक्योरिटी और स्किलिंग, इन पे चर्चा भी हुआ है और इनमें कंसेंसस भी हुआ है।
Another one, and
So during this year of presidency, one thing that has really hogged the limelight, the global stage, is artificial intelligence. So have there been any discussions on AI regulations as part of these 3 branches or otherwise? One, and second, as as part of holding this repository, will we also be holding any personal data of other citizens, other like international personal data, and will DPDP Act come into play, apply?
I think, Deepshakar, you're not, either you have, I haven't communicated it correctly or you haven't understood this. This is a repository of applications. This is not a repository of data. So this is, DPI refers to the digital public infrastructure, which is the actual application or a stack of applications that countries can use, customize, change, modify to deploy in their jurisdictions, in their countries, in their economies. So countries who use personal data will have their local regulations and rules on how that will be safeguarded. That has nothing to do with the app per se. On AI, no, so certainly, like I said, DPI, cybersecurity and skills were the basic talking points during the digital economy working group and working groups. But look, I think there is a global awareness of AI. I think every country realizes it. And I'm not saying this in the context of the G20 at all, but it is safe to say a country like India, which is the largest connected democracy in the world, the largest connected country by 25-26 with 1.2 billion Indians online, and with ambitions of deploying AI in a safe, trusted manner, will certainly have our views on AI resonating across the world of AI, and certainly we hope to shape how AI is progressing and how AI grows. I will also add to this that India is this year the president via the presidency of the GPA, the Global Program Partnership for Artificial Intelligence. And a lot of our views and our thoughts of AI, deployment of AI, the guardrails for AI will be certainly shared during the GPA in December 2023.
so one from the right, sir.
Hello sir, I am Rahul from Sputnik News. So my question is that a lot of discussion had happened on digital public infrastructure, but there are still some challenges like privacy, security, and digital divide. So how is India addressing that?
So the governance, so DPI governance layer, like I said, if you see what India has done, we have come up with a DPDP Act. So we understand these. Like I said in an earlier question, that we understand that DPIs represent good, but there are also challenges and guardrails that have been created by rules and regulations and legislation, which is what we have done with the DPDP Act. On the governance layer of DPI in particular, it is for each country to effectively create their own safeguards, like I talked about in the context of data protection, etc., etc. But we certainly don't see DPI as something that is to be limited by concerns of harm. Rather, harm and anything, illegalities or criminalities or whatever, have to be mitigated by the governments that deploy these technologies, as we are doing today. So the conversation of the DPI need not be in binary with the harm. We have to deal with the harm, we have to deal with the bad as we continue to push forward the good. Just to tell you about suggested principles in the G20 Digital Economy Working Group, we've talked about security and privacy as certainly an area where there is consensus and awareness that this needs to be addressed by partner countries, and governance of the DPIs, that it is for public benefit. And this is very important because from our point of view, this is what DPI has meant, that it is all about trust and transparency. So these principles have been agreed to during the DWG and the G20 under India's presidency.
So with your permission, another question, please.
Thank you. Nice.
Sir, I am Pranab Prakhar from Vision TV. My two small questions are, one is there any consensus on Bitcoin, and another is darknet? How is there any development on that?
No, no, there was no, certainly that was not in the agenda for this G20. And I think, as you know, like in the AI context, as I mentioned, these are conversations that are ongoing. Countries are struggling to find a common ground for crypto, and that will continue. And on the issue of the darknet, and which is the broader concept of criminality and crimes on the internet, these conversations will continue. But we are clear, as the G20 Digital Economy Working Groups have agreed, that cyber security for the digital economy is an area where there is consensus that we have to address that. And what the tools and mechanism, whether it involves the darknet or how do we deal with the darknet, is something that will be evolved by countries working together.
So with your permission, we'll call this press conference to a close now.
किसका?
हम G20 की बात करें, G20 digital economy पर ही है, हम उसी की बात करें. All of you are invited for lunch, please, on the 4th floor. Most welcome. Divyanshu and Dheeraj would look after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. ठीक था सुशील?